glut of important commemorations. It'll be 800 years since Magna Carta, 600 years since the Battle of Agincourt, 200 years since the Battle of Waterloo, and today we're talking about the centenary commemoration of the landings at Gallipoli in modern-day Turkey. Now, it's worth remembering that by 1915, World War I really hadn't only been a year old, but already we'd seen the fossilization of the trench system. And also, while we tend to talk about England and France, or Britain and France, let's be precise here, against Germany and Austria, there was also Russia fighting the Germans, and there was another empire involved, the so-called sick man of Europe, the Ottoman Empire, which had been around since the time of the Crusades. Now, let's be honest for a moment, the Ottoman Empire was clearly past its prime, but it was a source of manpower, and it was one of the areas where there wasn't trench warfare going on. Also, interestingly, through a quirk of geography and history, their capital city was actually on the very edge of their empire. So it was Winston Churchill, as the First Lord of the Admiralty, who came up with the idea of, why don't we land very near that capital city, rush into the centre, take it, and then we can knock out one of the major central powers relatively easily without all the trench warfare nonsense. It wasn't a bad plan, and you can't judge people just on what happened at the end as to the quality of the plan. But what happened was ultimately a catastrophe. This younger incarnation of Winston Churchill than we're normally used to looking at wanted a combined assault, using the navy to soften things up and get the landing boats, and then the army to go in and attack. Now this has become largely remembered as the Anzacs fights, the brave men from New Zealand and Australia fighting, and they certainly did fight bravely, but it's also worth remembering that always there were more British and French forces fighting in this battle than any specific amount of New Zealanders or Australians. Despite solid preparations, the mistakes happened pretty much from the beginning. The Navy couldn't get all the way up the Dardanelles, and also they faced a very brave Turkish officer, Mustafa Kemal, later known as Ataturk, and he was a bit of a military genius when it came to defending his own homeland. The other problem was, once the landings occurred, many happened at places where there were cliffs and other places where there wasn't a lot of time to regroup, and this was all about speed and not bogging down. However, that's exactly what happened. As the Turkish resistance stiffened, the Anzacs and British and French bogged down into trench warfare, only this time under the sweltering Mediterranean sun. More landings took place further up the coast, but the Turks were always there, ready to defend their homeland, and who could blame them? So it descended into yet more trench warfare, but now with horrible disease, blistering sun, and a new enemy firing machine guns and artillery at these Allied troops. The Turks clung on. It was desperate for them as well, but ultimately there was a mass evacuation of all the forces. More than 250,000 casualties had been inflicted, and the Ottoman army fought on. What was remarkable is Churchill took full responsibility, and he actually quit his job and joined the trenches. It's that last point I'd like to pause on for a moment. The Lord of the Admiralty, a man in an important, and let's be honest, fairly safe job, safe in terms of being shot at least, turned round and said, "It's all my fault, I am resigning, I'm putting a steel helmet on, and I'm going to fight with the other troops in the trenches." How many other 20th century politicians have turned round, put their hands up and said, "This war or this catastrophe is all my fault, I am now going to put myself in harm's way"? I think that's one of the reasons why we should definitely doff our cap to Winston Churchill a little bit. However, let's look at it from the other point of view. It's always a rather European-centric view of Gallipoli. From the point of view of the Ottomans, they weren't really Turks yet, because the Turkish Republic was carved out of the Ottoman Empire after this. The Ottomans feared, quite rightly, that if they lost, it would be the end of the empire, and that's exactly what happened in 1919 and 1920. Brand new countries were carved out. Today, these names do have echoes, Palestine, Syria, Iraq, Kuwait. Recognise these names? There is still violence being fought over the borders that were relatively arbitrarily set after World War I. So you could say that this is an example where everybody lost out from the legacy of World War I. Thank you for watching. A slightly heavy one today, but I can do light. At History Gems every day on Twitter has fun little history facts, and every day of the week on the Facebook page there's more history, fun and information. But if you want more, there's the Busy Person's Guide to British History, a full book or ebook available on Amazon. Thank you for watching.